With the launch of a fresh new WoW expansion along with the announcement of new fresh Wrath servers, the majority of World of Warcraft's casual player base will be returning to the game. These players make up the majority of the player base and are usually trending on the older side of the community. They are usually those who fell in love with World of Warcraft when they were younger but are now tied down by responsibilities outside of World of Warcraft, or even just lost interest in the game and choose to only play it for a few hours. The definition of a casual is someone who plays the game only for a few hours a day or even per week. Whether that's by choice or because of responsibilities, the majority of these casuals will be coming back to World of Warcraft Classic for the launch of Wrath of the Lich King and fresh servers so that they can come back to a fair playing field. And what is casual friendly? Casual friendly, in my opinion, is a game that allows casuals to experience all parts of the game and continue to progress despite only having a few hours per day or per week to play. So in this video, we'll be answering that question. Will Classic Wrath of the Lich King be casual friendly? Don't forget to give the video a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoy the video. Now, if we take a step back in time and look back at classic vanilla WoW, it appears that it did not serve the casual player base very well. The PvP system rewarded the players who played the most, usually all day, literally all day for months if you wanted rank 14, the highest rank, and PvE required you to go out of your way for world buffs, then log off your character until it was time to raid, and that's not even including farming gold for enough raid consumables like flasks, potions, food, and more. So really, in many ways, classic vanilla WoW was not casual friendly. Many players like this and reminisce that vanilla WoW was a hard game. In TBC, it became much easier to prepare for raid. You only needed a flask, some food for well-fed, some weapon oil, maybe a scroll if you're really min-maxing. Fast forward to Wrath, and it's the same story, but now there's feasts, so you don't need to bring food yourself. Your buddy can provide food for the whole raid. It's not game-breaking, but, you know, it's a nice addition. Remember when mages had to trade window food and water to a raid? I mean, thank goodness for mage tables. But going back to vanilla, you know, there were long, difficult attunements. Well, maybe just Onyxia, not so much Blackwing Lair, but Blizzard really took the idea of attunements to the next level in TBC by introducing heroics and requiring revered reputation in order to even enter heroics, which were then part of longer attunements such as the Karazhan attunement or Tempest Keep attunement. Now in Wrath, there are way less attunements. You often just need to complete the final boss of the non-heroic version of an instance to access the heroic version. There are a few small attunements besides this in Wrath, but it's largely absent to the extent it was in TBC. Now in vanilla, when you had an opportunity to raid, you had 40 players all competing for gear, and there was a pretty good chance you could go to a raid and walk away with no loot that week. This got better when tokens were introduced that could be redeemed for your gear, which increases your chances of getting items when you raid, and especially in TBC when the raid size was reduced to 25 and 10 mans. Not only that, but bosses in vanilla dropped 2 to 3 items. In TBC, they dropped 4 to 5. This definitely helps with getting gear from a raid. However, TBC did introduce raids with way more mechanics than in vanilla, and because of the smaller raid size, each raider had more importance. Too many players messing up in a 10 or 25 man raid, and that's a wipe. However, we saw that the raids in TBC Classic really didn't turn out to be as hard as we thought they were. We spent months farming Magtheridon, Gruel's Lair, and Karazhan. When Serpent Shrine Cavern and Tempest Keep finally released, the only 3 bosses that gave casual guilds trouble were really Morrogrim, Vosh, and Kael'thas, and these were nerfed eventually. Then there was Hyjal and Black Temple, which were steamrolled through. Even Sunwell was completed within hours after release. Maybe not by casuals, but Sunwell is the exception, not the rule for TBC. Then when we look forward to Wrath of the Lich King, we see an extremely easy tier 7, which occurs in phase 1 of Wrath Classic, including Nox Ramus. Blizzard actually plans on implementing increased health and damage to monsters in Nax because the community acknowledges how easy it really is, and more than 80% of the 14,000 people who responded to the survey likes this change. Most notably, however, with Wrath is that bosses do not have many mechanics. Parry haste has been removed except for a handful of bosses, and only a few absolutely require a tank to be expertise capped. And overall, only a small handful of bosses in Wrath go down in history as being difficult, namely Yogg-Saron without any watchers and 25-man heroic Lich King. Other bosses you can argue about, but with the abundance of guides and private server practice over the years, it's hard to imagine many guilds struggling through Wrath raiding. After all, many look back at Wrath and conclude that it introduced puggable raids, meaning they were so easy that any random pickup group or random group of players could clear all the content. That is a win for casuals. What else is worth noting is in Wrath is that there are 10 and 25-man versions of raids and the heroic raids. Depending on how you look at it, it either requires you to run 2 versions of the same raid in order to maximize your chances at gear each week, or it gives casual players an extra opportunity to get gear by being able to tag along for an extra raid that will fit their schedule. Blizzard, however, is looking to change that in Classic Wrath, possibly making them share a lockout so that you're only running one of the same raid each week. Whether this actually helps casuals or hurts them is to be seen. Maybe it will mean that the min-maxers will only run the heroic version since it drops better loot, and the casuals will only have a chance at the normal gear, but we're going to have to see how it plays out ultimately. When it comes to dungeons and heroics, the loss of random dungeon finder is definitely a blow to the casual. The ability to queue up and instantly teleport to a dungeon saves time, it lets casuals level faster, get gear faster, and that means they make better use of the little time that they have to play. Not to mention with the new tool, it means having to whisper players, spam in chat that you're looking for group or looking for more, and that's just more effort that might discourage casual players from doing dungeons and heroics at all. Many veterans of WoW will agree that Wrath made the game much easier, even bringing the rise of the term Wrath Baby. But it looks like with the changes Blizzard is making to Wrath Classic, they are going in a different direction. It seems they are trying to undo some of the elements that made Wrath of the Lich King casual friendly. With the removal of Dungeon Finder, we're losing the disenchant button, found below the Need and Greed button when an item drops with group loot. This means you'll need to ask if someone's an enchanter in your group, then give them the item to disenchant / roll for the shard and open a trade window. It's not really a big deal, but some might find it annoying to have to do that over and over and over. Another element of Wrath of the Lich King is the incredible class balance, where vanilla forced you to play a spec to be invited for a raid. For example, if you were a shaman, you're going resto. If you're a paladin, you're going holy, or else you're not getting invited. Balanced druids, ret paladins, prot paladins, these all were not viable for raiding in vanilla. TBC changed this big time, and in Wrath it's even more balanced. Literally every class and spec has a place in the raid. Bring the player, not the class. That was the design philosophy for raiding in Wrath. This is a victory for the casual player, who can now play the spec that they want to go along with that class fantasy that they like, and not be forced to play the quote best spec or the quote best class. Now, the introduction of badges in TBC also allowed players to get gear that was almost as good as 25-man raiding gear by running heroics, allowing a very smooth transition into raiding. These badges continue to be valuable throughout the expansion too. Wrath continues with this excellent system, which allows players to gear up by grinding out heroics and farming their badge gear. But instead of calling them badges in Wrath, they are emblems. Now, this is a very important point: the ability to get gear more easily. This led to the term welfare epics, epics that anyone can get for doing very little or requiring very little effort. For example, the empty mug of Dire Brew is the exact same as the Bloodlust brooch, but can be attained in one run of Brewfest instead of farming 45 badges of justice. Now in Wrath, welfare epics become even more accessible, with emblems allowing the purchase of very powerful epics and an absolute abundance of craftable BOE gear. And I mean that there is a ton of craftable BOE epic gear. I would argue that when it comes to PvE, Wrath is very casual friendly. Now let's switch gears up a bit from dungeons, raiding, and PvE, and let's talk a little bit about the leveling experience. Now in vanilla, it was long, there weren't a lot of quests, and for some classes, it really was a struggle. Fast forward to TBC, and there was an experience squish. There were class buffs, buffed experience gains, and a ton of added quests, and even whole towns added to the game. Outland was perfectly streamlined for leveling, where vanilla had quests scattered around. Wrath of Lich King takes it even a step further. While there wasn't another XP squish from levels 1 to 60, there was in fact an XP squish from 60 to 70 introduced in Wrath, decreasing the amount of experience needed by a whopping 30%. Not to mention, once you get patch 335 talents and scaling, you'll be leveling much, much faster. And the elephant in the room, heirlooms. These items upgrade with your character as you level. They give you bonus experience gains while you wear them. It is a massive change to the leveling experience, making it much faster and much easier. And that is a win for the casual player base. Let's also not forget that Joyous Journeys, a classic WoW invention, will be coming a few weeks before pre-patch, and that will last all the way until Classic Wrath launches, granting a whopping 50% increased experience gains on top of all the other Wrath changes from all sources. However, let's not forget that Random Dungeon Finder was an incredible tool for leveling your character. With its removal, we lose the Satchel of Helpful Goods, which contained an awesome unique or blue item. It also granted a ton of bonus experience and gold. It was really effective to just spam RDF to level, and that is a loss for the casual player base. But you can also just skip the entire leveling experience by buying a boosted character, this time to the tune of a level 70, with the exception being you cannot buy a Death Knight. Another win for the casual player, and another win for Blizzard's pocketbook. When it comes to leveling in Wrath Classic, I think we can safely say it will be casual friendly. Alright, switching gears, let's talk about PvP. We mentioned briefly at the start that in vanilla, the PvP system rewarded the players who played the most, usually all day, for months if you wanted rank 14. In TBC, the arena system changed that, which allowed the most skilled players to rise to the top and receive more points while being able to play the game less. If you play 10 games a week and win them all that week, you're done, and you have a nice high rating granting lots of points. So if you want to just play casually, but you're really, really good at the game, arenas work for you. In Wrath, this continues, but with an added bonus. Team rating is going to be removed in Wrath Classic, and personal rating is being introduced. This is a win-win for players because it encourages players to not stay locked in their team, but instead explore playing with different players since you're not all sharing a team rating. There's still a good amount of battleground grinding required for some offset pieces in TBC, but in Wrath, the introduction of Vault of Archivon allowed an incredibly easy way to not only get your PvP offset pieces, but actual PvP set pieces. What would have taken a lot of honor farming or time gated behind arena points is now literally dropping off of a weekly raid. This is another example of free epics or welfare epics in Wrath. This was also an expansion where PvE had a big effect on PvP, with the best in-slot trinkets only dropping in PvE encounters, big powerful PvE items being best in slot for PvP like Bryn Troll or Shadowmourne, but that is a topic for another time. From my observation, it appears to me that in vanilla, the best loot and the endgame content was exclusive to the hardcore and out of reach to the casual. But as we progress to Wrath of the Lich King Classic, it appears that the best loot and endgame content will be attained first by the hardcore, but eventually to the casual. A casual couldn't get rank 14 gear in vanilla, but in Wrath, a casual will get fully geared eventually. Blizzard certainly made Wrath a more casual game than its predecessors. With the hashtag some changes announced, however, it does look like maybe Wrath Classic will be slightly different. The removal of RDF and the increased difficulty of Nox Ramus shows that maybe Blizzard's philosophy is seeing some changes. Maybe Blizzard sees that the Blizzard of old may have gone overboard on making the game too easy, and they want to undo some of those changes that came with Wrath to make it a little more like how they envision a classic WoW re-release. Now, if you're a casual, you're going to want to check out the video shown here, which lists the top 3 most overpowered classes in Wrath. It is a really awesome video in my opinion. But before you go, don't forget to give this video a like. It helps me out a bunch, and a subscribe would be amazing. Thank you very much, and I will see you next time.